The lock on Marcus Chun's side gate clicked open at 3:15 p.m. on a Tuesday. He was in his home office reviewing permit applications for the county when the security camera alert lit up his phone. A woman in a navy blazer and white capris was walking through his backyard with a clipboard, photographing his shed, his garden boxes, his pergola. Marcus recognized her immediately. Patricia Whitmore, the HOA president who'd been sending him violation notices for 6 weeks straight. She had no idea the man she'd been harassing was the senior building inspector who could shut down her entire neighborhood. But she was about to find out. Where are you from? Tell us in the comments below. And if you're loving this story, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Now, let's see exactly how this unfolded. This is a story in 3 parts. The violation that pushed a good person too far, the confrontation where power shifted completely, and the resolution where justice was finally served. In the first part, you'll witness Marcus Chun's descent from patient homeowner to someone pushed beyond reason. For 6 weeks, he endured citation after baseless citation, each one more absurd than the last. His military discipline kept him measured, diplomatic, trying to resolve things properly through HOA channels. But Patricia Whitmore's power trip knew no bounds, and her escalating demands came with threats that would have crushed a normal homeowner. What she didn't know was that Marcus wasn't normal. His day job gave him insight into just how many codes she was breaking while enforcing fake ones. The second part brings the confrontation Patricia never saw coming. The moment she stepped onto his property without permission, Marcus finally had her exactly where he wanted her. The calm, calculated way he revealed who he really was and what he'd been documenting turned her world upside down in seconds. The final part delivers justice so precise, so devastating, that it changed the entire neighborhood forever. Here's exactly how it happened. Marcus Chun hadn't planned on this kind of retirement. At 52, the former Marine Corps civil engineer had accepted a civilian position as senior building inspector for Jefferson County, thinking it would be a quieter way to use his expertise. He'd bought the modest 3-bedroom ranch house in Meadowbrook Estates, specifically because it backed up to protected wetlands privacy, nature, peace. After 28 years of barracks and deployments, he wanted simplicity. His wife, Rachel, had passed away from cancer 2 years prior, and the house represented a fresh start. He kept the lawn maintained, the exterior painted, everything by the book. That was just who Marcus was: precise, respectful of rules, and deeply fair-minded. The first violation notice appeared in his mailbox on a Monday morning in early September. According to Patricia Whitmore, HOA president, his shed, a simple 8x10 structure he built to code and with proper permits, violated the community's aesthetic guidelines because it was visible from the street. If you stood at a specific angle in his driveway. Marcus read the notice twice, confused. The shed was barely visible, tucked beside his fence. He called Patricia that afternoon, keeping his tone professional and friendly. She'd been dismissive, almost condescending. "Mr. Chun, the guidelines are clear. All structures must be approved by the Architectural Review Committee." Marcus explained he'd purchased a home with the shed already there, built by the previous owner with all proper permits. Patricia's response was ice. "That's not my problem. Move it or face fines." 2 weeks later, a second notice arrived. His garden boxes, 4 raised beds where Marcus grew tomatoes, peppers, and herbs, were commercial agriculture and violated residential zoning. Marcus actually laughed when he read that one. Commercial agriculture, 4 small vegetable beds. He'd reviewed thousands of permits in his career. This was absurd. He attended the next HOA meeting, bringing photos and documentation proving the beds were ornamental landscaping, well within code. Patricia barely looked at his evidence. "The board has decided," she announced to the room of 30 residents, most of whom avoided eye contact with Marcus. "All garden structures must be removed within 14 days. The third notice arrived on a Friday, and this one made Marcus's jaw tighten. His pergola, a beautiful cedar structure he built himself the previous spring to create shade over his back. Patio was an unauthorized permanent structure, requiring immediate removal. The notice came with a threat: $500 per week in fines, starting immediately, with a lien against his property if unpaid. Marcus sat at his kitchen table that evening, the notice in front of him, and felt something shift. He'd been patient. He'd been diplomatic. He'd followed every procedure. But Patricia Whitmore wasn't interested in rules or fairness. She was interested in power. Marcus made 2 phone calls that night. The first was to a real estate attorney who confirmed that none of the citations had legal standing. The HOA was vastly overstepping its authority. The second call was to his office, where he pulled the permit history for every property in Meadowbrook Estates, including Patricia Whitmore's own home. What he found made him smile for the first time in weeks. Patricia's house had an unpermitted deck extension, an unpermitted fence height violation, and most damning, a converted garage being used as a rental unit without proper inspection or permits. If Marcus wanted to, he could red tag her property tomorrow, but Marcus Chun didn't act impulsively. He'd spent 3 decades planning operations, so he waited, documented, and prepared. And on Tuesday afternoon, when Patricia Whitmore made the catastrophic mistake of entering his property without permission, everything was finally ready. Marcus watched Patricia on his phone screen for exactly 90 seconds before stepping outside. She was thorough. He'd give her that photograph in his shed from 3 angles, measuring his garden boxes with a tape measure she brought, even peering through the pergola slats as if searching for violations. She wore the same self-satisfied expression she'd had at the HOA meeting, the look of someone who genuinely believed rules existed to serve her authority. Marcus saved the security footage to his cloud drive, then walked calmly out his back door. Patricia didn't notice him until he was 10 feet away. When she turned and saw him, there was no embarrassment in her expression, no acknowledgement that she just committed criminal trespass. Instead, she straightened her blazer and lifted her clipboard like a shield. "Mr. Chun, I'm conducting the inspection I notified you about." Marcus's voice was quiet, almost gentle. "You notified me you'd be inspecting from public areas. You're currently on my private property without permission or legal authority." Patricia's eyes narrowed. "As a OA president, I have every right to ensure compliance with our covenants." Marcus pulled out his phone. "And as the property owner, I have every right to call the sheriff and have you removed for trespassing. Would you like me to do that?" The color drained slightly from Patricia's face, but she recovered quickly. "That won't be necessary. I'm simply documenting your ongoing violations before we proceed with liens and legal action." She gestured toward his shed with her pen. "This structure alone represents thousands in fines you've ignored." Marcus nodded slowly. "Patricia, do you know what I do for a living?" She blinked, caught off guard by the question. "I neither know nor care about your employment, Mr. Chun." "That's irrelevant to your HOA violations," Marcus smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. "I'm the senior building inspector for Jefferson County. I review permits, conduct inspections, and enforce building codes for every property in this jurisdiction, including Meadowbrook Estates, including your home at 2847 Willowbrook Drive." The clipboard in Patricia's hand dipped slightly. Marcus continued, his voice still quiet but carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "Your shed was built with proper permits in 2018 by the previous owner, inspected and approved by my office. My garden boxes are ornamental landscaping, well within residential code. My pergola was built to specification with engineered footings and passed final inspection last April. I have the documentation for all of this. Naturally, since I processed most of it myself." He took a step closer. "But your property, Patricia, is a different story entirely." Patricia's face had gone pale. "I don't know what you're implying." Marcus pulled out a tablet from his back pocket, already loaded with permit records and photographs. "Your deck extension added 64 square feet without permits or inspection. That's a code violation requiring immediate correction and fines of up to $10,000. Your fence exceeds the maximum height allowed in rear yards by 18 inches. That's another violation. But the real issue is the converted garage you're renting out on Airbnb. He turned the tablet so she could see the listing he pulled up. No permit for conversion, no inspection for occupancy, no business license, no lodging tax registration. That's not just a code violation, Patricia. That's tax fraud. Patricia's hand went to her throat. You're using your position to harass. Marcus cut her off, his Marine officer voice finally emerging. I haven't used my position at all. Yet, I've simply done exactly what you've been doing to me, documenting violations. The difference is mine are real. Yours are invented. He crossed his arms. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave my property immediately. You're going to withdraw every citation you've issued against me. You're going to submit a written apology to the HOA board and resign as president. And you're going to fix your own violations before I'm forced to make an official inspection. Patricia's voice was barely a whisper. And if I refuse? Marcus's expression didn't change. Then tomorrow morning, I'll red tag your property, shut down your rental, report you to the tax authority, and recommend the county attorney pursue charges for operating an illegal lodging business. Your choice, Patricia. Justice or mercy? He gestured toward his gate. You have until 5 p.m. today to decide. Patricia Whitmore left without another word, her clipboard hanging forgotten at her side. Marcus watched her go, then returned to his office where 3 formal inspection requests for Meadowbrook Estates properties were waiting. He smiled. Sometimes justice didn't come from a courtroom. Sometimes it came from simply being the right person in the right place. When someone pushed too far, the email arrived at 4:47 p.m., 13 minutes before Marcus's deadline. It was addressed to the entire Meadowbrook Estates HOA board, with Marcus copied. In it, Patricia Whitmore withdrew all citations against his property, acknowledged they were issued in error, and announced her immediate resignation as HOA president effective immediately. The tone was professional, but brief, no real apology. No acknowledgement of her trespass or abuse of authority. Just a quick exit before things got worse. Marcus forwarded the email to his attorney with a simple note. Resolved. No further action needed. But he knew Patricia's story wasn't finished. She'd been humiliated, and humiliation made people reckless. The following Tuesday, Marcus received a call from his supervisor. Someone had filed a formal complaint, alleging he was using his position to harass a constituent. The complaint was anonymous, but Marcus knew exactly who'd filed it. His supervisor, Derek Williams, had worked with Marcus for 4 years and knew his character. I have to investigate this, Derek said apologetically. But walk me through what happened. Marcus did, sending over the security footage of Patricia trespassing, copies of her baseless citations, the permit records showing his structures were legal, and the documentation of Patricia's own violations, which he discovered through routine records review, not targeted harassment. Derek was quiet for a long moment after reviewing everything. Marcus, you know I have to inspect her property now. This complaint made it official. 3 days later, Derek conducted a formal inspection of Patricia Whitmore's home. Marcus wasn't present. He'd recused himself from anything involving Meadowbrook Estates to avoid any appearance of impropriety. But Derek called him that evening with the results. It's worse than you documented. The garage conversion has electrical work that's wildly out of code, potential fire hazards, and the foundation shows signs of water damage. I had to red tag it immediately. She's got 30 days to bring everything up to code or face daily fines. Derek paused. She tried to claim you planted evidence or falsify records. I had to explain that permit records are public and that her own property deed showed the work was done without authorization. She didn't take it well. The neighborhood drama that followed was inevitable. Within a week, everyone in Meadowbrook Estates knew the story. Patricia had been harassing a county inspector, got caught trespassing, and had her own property red tagged for serious violations. The new HOA president, a retired accountant named George Chin, no relation to Marcus, called Marcus personally to apologize for Patricia's behavior and ask, if he'd be willing to review the HOA's guidelines to ensure they were actually enforceable. Marcus agreed on one condition: the review would be done transparently, with input from all residents, and the new guidelines would be based on actual code requirements, not arbitrary aesthetics. 2 months later, Marcus sat on his back patio under the pergola Patricia had tried to force him to remove. The evening was perfect late October, temperature in the low 70s, the wetlands behind his property alive with the sound of frogs and birds. His garden boxes were bursting with fall vegetables: kale, lettuce, Brussels sprouts. The shed stood exactly where it had always been, freshly painted. George Chun had stopped by earlier with the revised HOA guidelines, which Marcus had reviewed and approved. They were sensible. Focus on genuine community standards. Rather than power trips. Marcus had heard through neighborhood gossip that Patricia had spent over $15,000 bringing her property up to code, had lost 3 months of rental income when the garage was shut down, and was now facing a potential IRS audit for unreported rental income. Her husband, apparently unaware of the illegal rental operation, had been less than pleased to discover the financial and legal mess his wife had created. They listed the house for sale last week. Marcus didn't feel triumphant about Patricia's downfall. He felt something quieter, more like equilibrium restored. He'd spent his entire career enforcing rules fairly, without favor or prejudice. Patricia had assumed her position, gave her authority to harass people without consequence. She'd learned differently. As Marcus sat there in the peace he'd worked his entire life to earn, he thought about Rachel, who'd always said the same thing: rules protect everyone, but only when they're applied honestly. She'd been right. And somewhere, Marcus hoped she was proud that he'd stood up not just for himself, but for the principle that authority without accountability was just tyranny with a clipboard. Justice, as it turned out, didn't always require a courtroom. Sometimes it just required being the right person, with the right knowledge. Pushed exactly one step too far, across the country in Portland, Oregon, food truck owner Maya Santos was cleaning her grill when a woman in a business suit approached, demanding Maya move her truck from her public parking spot. The woman threatened to call the city, the mayor, everyone she knew. Maya smiled and pulled out her phone, showing her vendor permit issued by the city council, where Maya served as the newly elected transportation commissioner. Please keep making threats. I'd love to hear who you think can overrule me on public parking policy. The woman's face went white. But that's a story for another time.